Hey guys, I'm Sophie from Gains by Brains, and in this video I will be explaining everything about macros and how you can track them. Nutrients are molecules in the food that are necessary for your body to function. There are two subgroups. You have micronutrients and you have macronutrients. So let's start with the macronutrients. Your food consists of either fats, proteins, carbs, or a combination of those three macronutrients. Now the reason why they are called macronutrients is because your body needs them in a larger quantity. Your food also contains micronutrients, for example, vitamins and minerals. And the reason why they are called micronutrients is because your body needs them in smaller quantities compared to the macronutrients. Now each of these macronutrients provide your body with energy in the form of calories. 1 gram of carb and 1 gram of protein contains 4 calories, whereas 1 gram of fats actually contains 9 calories. This means that if you eat something that contains 10 grams of carbs, 0 grams of fat and 0 gram of protein, that food item actually contains 40 calories in total, because 1 gram of carb contains 4 calories. Let's start with the protein, because if you are into fitness, then protein is your best friend. Protein is responsible for the growth of new tissue, but it is also responsible for fixing broken tissue, which is what actually happens when you're working out. So if you want to gain or maintain muscle, then you should eat enough protein. Now let's continue with fats, because fats are actually really essential for your body to function properly. You need fats to help with your immune system, to help with your central nervous system. It controls your hormone levels. It also helps with absorbing certain vitamins. And it is also a great source of energy for your body. Now you may have heard that there are good fats and that there are bad sources of fats. Where the good fats decrease the risks of getting a heart disease, the bad fats do the opposite. Now the good guys are the unsaturated fats, the fats that you can find in, for example, vegetable oils or in nuts, and also omega-3. And the bad sources of fats, for example, the unsaturated fats, which you can find in animal products. Now let's talk about carbs. Carbs are your body's main source of raw material for energy, glucose. Carbs can be classified as either simple carbs or complex carbs. Simple carbs are sugars. They are absorbed very quickly into your system, and they are also the quickest source of energy for your body. Now the complex carbs are digested more slowly, and those are the starches or fibers. So now that I have discussed everything you need to know about macros, let's continue with how you can actually track them. If you want to track your macros, you definitely need a food scale, and I would also recommend getting a tracking app. Now this is not necessary because you can also calculate it yourself or write it down, but since the tracking apps are usually free, I would definitely recommend getting one because it's just way easier. So if you want to start tracking your macros, then you need to make sure that you weigh everything you eat. Because if you know how many grams of a certain item you are consuming, then you can fill it into your app, and then the app shows you how many macros it contains, how many calories it contains. So by the end of the day, you get a really nice overview of how many proteins you've had, how many carbs you've had, how many fats you've had, and you can also see whether they are the good fats or the bad fats, and how many calories you consumed that day. So I thought that it would be maybe fun to show an example, so let's start tracking. So now if you actually want to start tracking something, then you can click the little plus button, and then you can either fill in the name of the food item and then you can look the right one up. Definitely recommend checking, because there are some different versions usually of the same product with different macros, so check the back of your product and then check if it's the same. But you can also scan your barcode. So for example, I have this rice here, and then it automatically gives the right product, or usually it does, not always. As you can see here, it says the different macros. So 100 grams of this rice actually contains 350 calories, 68 carbs, 2.5 fats and 9 grams of protein. Welcome in my kitchen. I thought that it would be a good idea to show you some examples of protein sources, carb sources and fat sources that are the staples in my diet, and maybe you can use them and implement them in your own diet. First, I will show you some protein sources. The first one that I want to show you is a protein source that I always tend to go to when I'm dieting, because it is very lean. A great example is white fish, but you can also think of chicken breast or maybe a lean steak. An example of a protein source higher in animal fat is a hamburger. Per 100 gram of burger it contains 18 grams of fat, while the fish that I just showed you contains 0 grams of fat. I do not always want to eat animal products, so there are also great alternatives available if you are a vegetarian, for example. I would really recommend looking up the macros if you are buying meat replacements, because sometimes they are really low in protein and really high in carbs or in fats, while others are exactly the opposite. But you can definitely incorporate them into your diet. So those were examples of my go-to protein sources. So let's continue with carbs. So one of my favorite sources of carbs is actually rice. But I do have to admit that I usually switch my rice or swap my rice for potatoes when I'm dieting, because potatoes are less calorie dense, meaning that for the same amount of calories I can eat way more potatoes compared to rice, and that really helps me with feeling full and feeling saturated. Other great sources of carbs are potatoes. You have your regular potato, you can also have a sweet potato, whatever you prefer. So another example of carbs, which is actually also full of micronutrients, are vegetables. I always aim for at least 200 grams of vegetables a day. So let's move on to our final macronutrient of the day, the fats. When I cook my food, I cook it in rice oil. Previously I cooked my food in olive oil, but since olive oil has a lower smoke temperature, I switched to rice oil. Fats actually per gram contain 9 calories, which is why I put a little bit of oil in the pan and then I dab it with a paper so that I use minimum oil. Another example of a very good fat source are actually nuts. Nuts are not only high in fat, but they are also high in protein, but they are also really high in calories, so you have to be a little careful with them. So last but certainly not least, one of my personal favorites is the avocado, however you pronounce it. It also contains a lot of micronutrients, which is a plus. Now that we have talked about my favorite food sources for protein, for carbs and for fats, let's make some dinner. So this was my video about macros and how you can track them. I really hope that it was helpful or useful for you, and if you liked it, please like this video and subscribe down below. And again, if you have any recommendations for future topics to be included in this series, or if you just want to say hi, please leave a comment and I will see you in my next video. Bye guys!